This is the story of how the Grinch stole Christmas. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please, don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be that his shoes were a little too tight. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. But I think the most likely reason of all was the fact that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his head or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in the town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath.
"And they're hanging their stockings,"
he snarled with a sneer.
"Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here."
Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming,
"I must find a way to keep Christmas from coming."
For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early and rush for their toys. And then, oh the noise, noise. That's the one thing the Grinch hated, the noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They'd feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. All the Whos down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of the Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought,
"I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming." But how?
Then he had an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch had a wonderful, awful idea.
"I know just what I'll do."
He laughed in his throat. Then he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. Then he chuckled and clucked,
"What a great Grinchy trick! With this hat and this coat I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer."
The Grinch looked around, but since reindeers are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said,
"If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead."
So he called his dog Max, and he took some red thread, and he tied a large horn to the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch shouted, "Get up!" and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. The Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square,
"This is stop number 1,
the old Grinchy Claus hissed. Then he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two. Then he popped his head out of the fireplace flue, with the Whos' little stockings all hung in a row.
"These stockings," he said, "are the first things to go."
Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant, around the whole room, and he took every present. Popguns, bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums. He stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. He stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee.
"And now,"
grinned the Grinch,
"I will stuff up the tree."
he grabbed hold of the tree and he started to shove. Then he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd gotten out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch was so sly and so slick that he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick.
"Why, my dear little tot,"
the fake Santa Claus lied,
"there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it back to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here."
And the fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And as Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. And the last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, that old liar. On the walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing at the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still in bed, all the Who's still a-snooze when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings and trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it.
"Pooh-pooh to the Who's,"
he was Grinchishly humming.
"They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a moment or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, 'Boo-hoo!' That's a noise,"
grinned the Grinch,
"that I simply must hear."
So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising up over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But this sound wasn't sad. No, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. He shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. All the Who's down in Whoville, the tall and the small, were singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other it came just the same. The Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so?
It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags.
He puzzled and puzzled until his puzzler was sore. And then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before.
"Maybe Christmas," he thought, "doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means something more."
And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say, the Grinch's tiny heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the moment that his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he leapt on his sleigh and he rode through the night. And he brought back the presents and the food for the feast. And the Grinch, he himself, carved the roast beast. Merry Christmas, everyone.